Welcome back to the News Beacon, where we go beyond headlines to examine human drama, irony, and shifting loyalties that shape today's political theater. And few moments capture that strange mix of devotion and disdain quite like the latest storm surrounding a high-profile MAGA influencer who, in the span of a single viral post, found himself labeled Jesus. What pathetic toady by a once friendly commentator, a phrase whose blunt cruelty struck a chord far beyond its original audience and sparked fierce debate over the nature of loyalty, authenticity, and self-interest in modern political fandom. At the center of this mess is a figure who rose to prominence not through policy expertise or public service, but by building a personal brand of relentless devotion to Donald Trump, translating every controversy, legal setback, and inflammatory statement into social media content that reassure followers the movement remained pure and unbreakable. Yet critics argue this loyalty was always more performance than principle, an algorithm-friendly act that rewarded outrage, simplified narratives, and, above all, unwavering defense of Trump, no matter how contradictory or legally fraught the circumstances became. The brutal critique itself came almost casually, dropped in a thread discussing the influencer's latest video in which he dismissed Trump's mounting legal battles as fake news hysteria and declared Trump's leadership ordained and untouchable rhetoric familiar to anyone who has followed MAGA circles, but which, for some former allies, finally crossed a line from strategic defiance into cultish flattery. And so, with just 7 words, Jesus, what pathetic toady, a crack appeared in the influencer's carefully curated shield of community approval, unleashing a torrent of reactions. Some supporters rallied to his defense, dismissing the insult as leftist trolling or jealousy from rivals craving attention, while others quietly admitted that the influencer's posture had become embarrassingly sycophantic, even by the combative standards of Trump's most loyal media surrogates. What makes the moment fascinating, analysts say, is not that an influencer was criticized. Social media is built on criticism, but that the insult resonated because it captured an uneasy truth that many in the movement have whispered privately for months, that the influencer's devotion had begun to look less like conviction and more like desperation, a desperate, clinging to relevance in a movement that increasingly rewards ever louder and less credible declarations of loyalty. Behind the scenes, figures familiar with the influencer's rise describe a one-savvy operator who understood the performance of politics. The need to frame every headline as an attack on the people rather than on Trump personally, but who, in recent months, seemed to lose that strategic edge, doubling down instead on praise so florid and absolute it left even MAGA veterans rolling their eyes. Meanwhile, rival conservative voices have quietly capitalized on the backlash, positioning themselves as defenders of the true spirit of the movement, pro-Trump yet willing to criticize tactics and messaging, a subtle rebuke that suggests the influencer's brand of blind flattery may be losing market value just as the 2025 race heats up. Ironically, the influencer's downfall was fueled by the same social media dynamics that built his career, the demand for ever more, extreme, absolute content to stay visible in crowded feeds, which in turn creates a spiral where nuance is punished and hyperbole rewarded, until performance becomes so exaggerated that even allies struggle to defend it. Yet while the insult went viral, observers caution against reading it as proof of a wholesale rejection of Trumpism. Instead, it reveals a more specific fatigue with what some see as the movement's court jesters, personalities who speak not to persuade the skeptical, middle but to reassure the converted in terms so extreme they risk turning the entire brand into self-parody. The influencer himself, true to form, responded defiantly, framing the critique as proof he was over the target and boasting that he would never apologize for defending Trump against globalist media lies. A response cheered by hardcore supporters, but which did little to win back those questioning his sincerity. More telling, perhaps, is that the original critic was not from the left, but a longtime right-wing commentator who has praised Trump's policies in the past, underscoring that the backlash is not purely partisan, but reflects internal unease over the movement's direction and the cost of total loyalty to a single personality. Looking ahead, strategists warn that the episode could signal a broader shift, as Trump's legal challenges and age force even loyalists to think about the movement's future. Influencers who built their brand on absolute deference may find themselves outflanked by figures willing to offer at least the appearance of independence. Yet history suggests the influencer story is far from over. In a media landscape driven by outrage, even criticism can become content, and few doubt he will use a viral insult to fuel fundraising, engagement, and new declarations of unbreakable faith. Ultimately, what remains most striking is how a single blunt insult, "Jesus, what a pathetic toady," could slice through layers of performance and provoke a genuine moment of reflection within a movement famous for resisting self-doubt, a reminder that, in politics as in life, the sharpest criticisms often come not from enemies, but from those once seen as allies. And so, as the dust settles, the influencer remains defiant, the MAGA base remains divided, and the broader question lingers. Can a movement built on loyalty tolerate moments of honesty? Or does every truth teller risk exile as a traitor? As always, thank you for joining us at the News Beacon, where we explore the stories behind the spectacle. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay with us as we keep following the shifting drama of politics, personalities, and the price of total devotion.